Welcome to Planning for a Perspective, where we are including a sloped ceiling in which it's sloping towards us. In this example, I'll be running this floor plan, and the places that we need to notice is where I'll be standing, which will be over 8 feet from this wall, and this is about 5 feet here. So overall, it will be standing over, for our VP, 13 feet. The plan for the view on this is that we are standing back 14 feet, and you'll see in the MP that I made it 16 to give myself some extra grid. And all we can generally plan when we look at our 1-point perspective, remember it's looking straight on, is about a 45-degree angle to either side of center. You may see a little bit more. I'm going to go relatively close to that. So the grid, the width of my grid, I'm going to just draw 30 feet. I could draw all the way over here if I really wanted to make sure that I've got this, but for this scenario, I'm going to go ahead and cut because it is a little past my view, and we'll take a look at that. But again, I could have chosen to go all the way across. In this case, I thought I'd run the scenario where, what if my wall continues and I don't really know where to stop my wall? So I thought I'd run this, where it's most likely going to stop my view here, and we could stop with that door along the edge. We'll set a VP of 5 feet up off of the floor. In other words, my eye line. I'll show you that in the grid in just a minute. To make note, along this line, the ceiling height is 16 feet, and it slopes up to 20 feet at the dashed line, and then it goes flat. So that's what we have to plot out. Now, in setting up the grid, as you can see here, come out a little bit, there we go. So in coming here, remember I mentioned that I planned for 30 feet across. So I set a grid that was 30 feet wide. I talked about how we had a 16-foot high ceiling at the lower mark, but at the taller mark, it's 20. So in this case, the grid is 20 feet high, and I can always plot it down to 16, but better that we have that 20-foot high to work with. So a few things I'll have to deal with. Remember that my back wall here, I'll do that a little bit more in the green. As I come across here, I'm imagining that the corner here is inside that alcove. This area here, until we get up to that dash line, is 9 foot for the ceiling height. So we'll plot that up as we go. What I've done here is put down a piece of translucent paper over top of my original grid. So I'm going to plot it on that. And if I were looking at another version of the drawing where I've got cabinetry and furniture, I would most likely add another layer on top so that I don't mess with my original framework, especially if it's pencil. I'll try to bring this in and out as best I can, but I'm also going to try to zoom in here so that you can see what I'm doing up close. So you may want to take a moment, oops, let me go a little smaller, a moment just to maybe take a screenshot, take a phone shot, something where you can see this as I refer to it. All right, let's stay in that view. Again, I have a 16-foot line along my back wall, and because I'm standing behind the 20-foot mark, I can go ahead and slope it up to that. And again, I'm going to have to create an alcove that's 9 foot high here. And in looking at that, when we have it, I'll do it in pencil here. This area here, I already did it, is 5 feet. So the first place I'm going to start with is in my grid, I'm going to come over 5 feet. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I've come over. This is the corner that's over here. And now I've just plotted out that 5 foot. What that means is this line, as it comes up my grid, is going to go to be 9 feet high. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to draw my line. Don't worry about what the height is yet. I can simply measure it in just a minute. Now I say measure because when I'm on this back wall plane, that's the beauty of 1-point perspective, right? I can always go and measure it. Once I come out here, I can only count my boxes, and that's the whole point of doing the rest of that work. So at this point, I'm going to make my life easy. Instead of trying to count boxes, or might get mixed up on what lines, I'm just going to go ahead and mark it out at 9 feet. Okay, so I'm establishing this corner here that's 9 feet off the ground. For the technique of it, anytime we have, I'm going to use that right angle symbol, anytime a wall that intersects at 90 degrees, you can always go back to the VP. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take that line, that mark, I'm going to go to the VP, and I'm going to carry my line out. Now where that stops is identified by what this distance is. So if I measure what that distance is, I think it's right around 12. Yeah, it's 12 feet in depth here. I chose to not draw a grid on this one so I could mark things just for the framework, but you could certainly do a 1 foot by 1 foot grid if that helps you. That means I have to come out 12 feet. Now at this point, for how far I come out, can't go to the back wall plane anymore. So I'm going to count my squares coming out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, so if I come there, I have to figure out how to come out here 5 feet. So just to be straight to go along there, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And to confirm that I'm accurate, I could take this from here to here, and yes, I line up. Now, I could have done that to begin with and not counted, but I wanted to talk about how the boxes could be counted in multiple ways to figure that out. So now, I know that that opening goes to here. I want to draw this now, this corner, to be 9 foot up off the ground. So I'm going to carry that up. And because I've already established what 9 feet was, I have now figured out my opening height. So I'm going to erase out the rest from that. Okay. And our line won't go up past that. So I'm going to go ahead and erase that so you can begin to see how it's going to look. After this here, this point here, the line is simply going to come forward. So it's just going to come forward. And I'm going to do that based on going back to the VP. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my bar in the middle. So don't catch any of my drafting dots. And I will use my VP. And yes, I could trace over it, but early on I would be as exact as you can. So I'm taking that point back to the VP because this overall is 90 degree. I'm coming out here and I'm just going to let that line fade. I'm just letting it fade. And then at that point is when I can see if I'm going to see the window or not. Again, this isn't a tried and true thing of I'm definitely not going to see past it. It's just a way that I'm showing you how the view could go. Okay, so in this case, looks like we've got some area here that we could plot up our window. Okay, but to begin with, I wanted to show you how that alcove would be and how we would do the lines here. To establish this back here, I'm going to go ahead and draw my line across the base. And though I've drawn my grid to end at this point, basically, this was the 30 foot here, I'm not going to draw a line on the side because I may decide I want to draw a few things past. So I'm not going to bother to do the line over here. But what I am going to do now is I'm going to figure out the 16 foot. I am going to go back to this wall point again. So I have to go back into this corner. And I'm going to come up 16 feet. And again, because I would be on the back wall, I could just go ahead and measure it. That will make things pretty easy. Okay, so we have 16 feet. So I'm simply going to carry that 16-foot mark all the way across. Don't worry about where it stops. Now here's the thing. This alcove goes, come out a second here so you can see. There we go. So this alcove goes across the floor into the back. Okay, so I'm going to draw that line there. So that line goes back into the corner here. And it ends where I have this wall. At this point, the structure of that 16-foot height ends, so I'm going to share the line there. I could have also measured up in the center, but I wanted to talk about that corner. So what we can do is we can then carry this up to the 16 foot. And then because this is one continuous wall here, I really should erase that. Okay, there we go. Now you can see that a little better. Okay, this height has to go back at the 9 foot up off the floor. So to start to imagine what that's going to be, there, I've got the ceiling line, and that's the ceiling line in here. I don't see that back corner because it's hidden behind this line. So what I've just done is I've figured out my 16, but my ceiling slopes up to 20. So now I have to figure out my 20-foot mark, and that's up here. The 20-foot mark starts out a particular distance, and that's where I'm going to plot it on the floor. Okay, so if I go back to this, I have it, or it should be, according to what our measurement sketches were, your drawing should read that it's 9 foot coming out. Okay. That means that I'm going to come out 9 feet, and I could count over here and bring it over. I could count them right on this line. I could do either way. I'll count on this line so you can see how it's going to draw up immediately. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's this point right here. Okay, so I've got this, and I've plotted it 9 feet from the back. So I come in a little closer for you to see that. Again, 9 feet in, and I counted 9 back. That's the point that I know that it changes to 20 feet. So what we do is we come up, and up in here, this is where we're going to see that it goes up to 20. And to figure out what that is, I do need to go back to here. I'm gonna come up, and I can see that I would be here. I bring the mark across. Oops, sorry, let me do that again. Okay, so I'm here at 9. I brought the bar over. I do have my guideline there, but just to make sure. I did that. Then I took my triangle just to guide myself up very quickly because that was 20 feet. We made our grid at the 20 foot. Now to figure out this point where it changes to 20, we knew it was at this point here, which was on here. So I brought the line up. I'm going to then connect those right there. And what happens is you connect your 16 foot to your 20 foot mark. And because then erase this one line here. Because then this is level with the floor and perpendicular to the wall, I can now take this point from the VP and I can come up. And now that's my 20 foot. Now I do need to identify that there is a line there to show that it changes height. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to carry that line across. And because it doesn't hit the wall, I'm not drawing anything there. If it did hit the wall, I'd figure 5 feet out, or was it? No, 9 feet. I'd come out 9 feet, go up and angle it. But in this case, I'm gonna let it just fade off to the side. Okay, so by the time we get done, let me come in a little closer. That's in essence what that view would look like. And then I would come in and plot out my doors and my windows and plot them in. But this gives you the opportunity, as well as this window. In this case, this window was a 7-foot sill height. It's an arched window. But that gives you the idea about how you would plot out that sloped angle if you had a view such as this.